Welcome to the next video. When we last left our adventurers, they had just got out of a combat with a bunch of druggies who tried to ambush them and were unsuccessful. When we ended the session, Olivax, the paladin dragonborn, was on top of a roof, which is about 3 stories tall, and he was enlarged, so instead of 7 feet tall, he was about 14 feet tall, and a guard pointed up at him and said, "Halt!" And then I gave the players about 3 rounds to do whatever they wanted before the guard arrived to talk to them. So Enzo decided to loot one of the bodies, and I read off a little note that he had that said, "Hey, meet here every mercy to get more product." He also picked up like a bag full of what looked like cocoa powder. Yeah, so he didn't understand what that was. Then Theron wanted to hide with the body, and Tink wanted to just look for that reporter lady looking person who was taking notes during the battle to understand like what the heck that was about. So he went like where she was last seen and was like, "Hey, we don't want to hurt you, we don't want to have to hunt you down, but like, are you good or not? Like, let us know." And he didn't hear anything. And then he wanted to cast invisibility on the body, so he had his homunculus go over and cast invisibility. And then Theron wanted to hide with the body, and I kind of told him like, "You guys are in the middle of the road, there's people all around you that can see you. They saw the body go invisible. There isn't really anywhere to hide." And so he decided to just pick up the body and just take off. And before he did that, though, he did ask Olivax, like, "Hey, are we staying? Are we leaving? Like, what are we doing?" And Olivax is like, Dragonborn Paladin, we stay and be honorable, and we talk to them and, confess what happened and things like that. So that was not what Theron was about. He wanted to interrogate this guy and felt like if it stayed that he would not have had that chance. So he took the body and he started running. However, all the people were like, "He stole a body, he's running this way, it's a bugbear." So the guards told the group to stay where they were, and they blew a horn, and there were more guards, 7 or 8 guards that ran past them seconds later. And Theron jolted around a corner, and he wanted to cast Silent Image to make a scene of what was actually there, but then just remove himself. And I was not okay with that, because it's way too powerful of a spell. The spell was Silent Image, and it allows you to cast a object, creature, or natural phenomenon, like a wall of fire or something like that, and then you're able to move it each turn. So it's possible he could have cast an image of himself and then used an action for it to run around the corner, but that's not what he did. Instead, I kind of wanted to understand this spell a little bit more, so I looked it up and read it, and I was like, yeah, it's not possible for you to make a scene and then you just not be there. And then my brother who plays Olivax was like, "Well, why don't you just make it so it's a crate?" I was like, "Yeah, that's perfect. He definitely can do that." But that's not, I didn't catch, he said before that he wanted to be a barrel or trash or something. I didn't catch that. I was only catching he wants to create a scene instead of an object. That wasn't really the intent of the spell. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that. I felt like it was important to me to do that, but looking back, it probably was not that important. I could have just been okay, sure, and then talk about the spell afterwards instead of spending 3 or 4 minutes discussing it. But alas, the guards rounded the corner, and they weren't able. They were on this trail, and they kind of were noticing something was off about the disguise that was cast. But then he used Minor Illusion, which doesn't have any verbal components, and he was able to make a noise. Someone screaming over here in the distance. So the guards immediately stopped what they were doing and ran that way, and then they were never able to return after that. So he was able to hide out and wait for that to pass, because the spell lasts 10 minutes, the disguise spell. So during that time, the group met Abbott, one of the guards. He's a tiefling, and he works for the Chain of Vorokef, and that's indicated by a black fist chain with a red swirl going around it pinned to his cape. And they had him sit in a line, and then he cast Zone of Truth, and they all accepted to fail it except for Enzo, who wasn't aware of what was happening, so he made his pass. And then they had another guard go stand by him as that was off to them. And then the guards quickly noticed, okay, this group is not from around here, as they started learning and telling them what was going on and what happened to them. And they're like, "Oh, this looks like a group of people who use dust, which is a drug." And so the players had some questions "Oh, what does that do? Is that really common?" They're like, "Yeah, unfortunately, it's becoming more common." And then they had some questions about the chain. And he's telling them, chain's a massive organization. There's thousands in our ranks. We have armies. We train most of the guards in the country. And then they had some questions about, how the chain works. And he's like, "You guys really should just take the Labelle tours. It's done by the Grimholt House, and they're known as the Feather Folk. Just ask them where they do them, and you guys can pay 3 gold to do it." He also asked them if they cast any magic, because it is illegal to cast magic unless you're registered, and they give you a token to prove that you're a registered member. So he's like, "You guys, this is your only warning, since you guys are seemingly new here. The next time we catch you, we have your guys' names and races down. If we ever catch you casting magic again, you'll be fined or worse, depending on the offense. So that was kind of a way for me to introduce the law and how all the houses are interacted. I also mentioned that there are the magic items, things sold at the carnival. Those are all registered items. Like, people know what the items do. There are hundreds of them, so they might not know offhand, but they can look it up and be like, okay, this is registered. Like, we know exactly what to expect here. Just because since magic is so prevalent in the city, like, people do know about it, and the houses that control it, are very aware of these things. So they kind of were also introduced to like all the different noble houses and the complexity of the city. Then after that basically hour-long discussion that they had with the guard, we went to Thadon, who then took the unconscious invisible body and he went down like a manhole in the ground into the sewers, and he tied the guy's hands together and stuffed his mouth, and then he basically waited for him to go visible, and then once he was visible, he woke him up, and then he then said, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you don't answer, I'm going to torture you. And then he wanted to spend some time torturing the guy, which I did not expect. I didn't expect him at all to even want to take the body and run. I didn't really see the point of doing that. It also seemed odd to me that he asked Olivax for his input and then just decided to bolt and not do what Olivax said when he's been trying really hard to get on Olivax's good side. So it seemed like very counterintuitive. But alas, he tried to get the guy to speak and he did not. So he just waited for the group to come or wait for the drugs to die off. And the rest of the group found him, as Tink knew that he would go underground. So Tink followed him and they were able to find him. And then they had this big discussion, like if torturing someone is the right way to do this. And Waldo basically checked out and was like, I'm going to go look for a rat to talk to. And then I described like that the sewers were actually really clean. So whoever like maintains the sewers does an excellent job, which is a hint at one of the houses, House Aurelius, that I've made, which is based off of a book series that I really like. And then Enzo and Olivax decided to question him. And this is where things, I think, went really bad in the session. And it's mostly was due to, number one, them not trusting me as a dungeon master, whereas like if you don't get information from an NPC, it is not me, Bo, the dungeon master, gatekeeping the information, meaning like I just don't want you to have it because you didn't say the specific thing or something other than that. And then the other thing was there were other like parts of the plot that have happened. Like when they were attacked, there were like reinforcements that came pretty quickly, and they wanted to know, how is that possible? It doesn't make any sense. Like, why were they able to be so quick? The guy who they asked about, his name was Oda, and he was a tiefling. I made this all up on the spot as far as like his story. He didn't know a lot of information. Like, who are all the friends around you? And he's like, I didn't really know them very well. We were just people who did drugs. Like, we weren't like kind to each other or anything. We just like did it out of necessity. He's like saying, yeah, I'm addicted to this. Like, so what? And he kept like asking for it. And he was like trying to grab it like with his chin and shoulder to grab the dust from them, since the players were like dangling it in front of him. Then I was like, kind of went around in circles as far as like getting information. He's like saying, I don't know anybody, talk to these people. And they were just like really frustrated because he didn't have any information. And I think the frustration stemmed from, number one, they rolled an insight check at the very beginning of the conversation. And I said, Olivax, this guy looks defeated, like you guys are going to kill him. So he might as well just tell you the truth. And Olivax, or the player, understood that only applied for the first sentence and then it wouldn't apply anywhere else. Whereas for these social encounters, you make one roll and then it applies to the conversation. And then if I need another roll, then I'll call for one. But like if you roll an insight check, like you're reading this person really well. So it's not just a one moment. You only read them well for this sentence. It's like, no, you're reading the conversation, you're reading his body language very well, or you're being persuasive throughout the whole conversation. So that's how it should be played, in my opinion, and that's how I intend to run it moving forward. That's how I've always been running it, but I don't think they've realized it. So they went around in circles a lot, and they got really frustrated because he just did not have any information. And I was just like 20 minutes in, I was like, guys, he doesn't have any information to tell you. And I should have just stopped it there, but I did say, well, is there anything else you want to ask? And I think that was like trying to like keep the toe in the door, meaning that there's still an opening and they could maybe get something out of him, where he doesn't have anything. Like he's told you everything he knows, and if that doesn't make sense, like as a player, like that doesn't make sense why he doesn't know anyone else, you're obviously missing something, and you need to just like put it on the back burner and you'll figure it out later. But they got really hyper focused on like maybe like trying to challenge me, like, oh, because he's not giving me information, I'm gonna try even harder because I'm gonna prove him wrong, like that he does have information. But that just wasn't the case, and I kind of explained that like in the session. So we talked about it a lot afterwards as far as, you know, moving forward. And the next day, you know, I talked to 3 of the players, kind of touching on pain points of the session, and it just really boiled down to moving forward. I just need to ask, you know, what is your character trying to get out of this conversation? And then I have, you know, I can just give them bullet points instead of them having to role play every single detail that they're getting out of information, because that can take forever. As well as, you know, we only play for 2 hours. So if we can keep the conversations a little bit more brief, it'll give them a lot more time to explore and learn more information. So I have a good game plan moving forward. You know, they didn't seem to have enjoyed that last 30 minutes of the session, but other than that, I felt like it went fine. I did talk to, you know, the players about the magic and going off on their own to try to maybe stay as a group a little bit more. It doesn't happen very often when people break away, but it happens enough where people are remembering it. Like when you break away from the group and go do your own thing, like those bad sessions are a lot more relevant to the players' minds than a good session is. And I would say we've had good sessions for the last 5 sessions in a row. Like they've been perfect, except for this session. And we had a couple hiccups with understanding the layout of the street and what you wanted to do, as well as like getting information out of this drug addict who didn't really have any information. And there's reasons why. So yeah, so next sessions, we're getting close to meeting in person, which would be in about 3 or 4 weeks from now. So players really want to meet more often so they can get things done. They want to split the party and do like half and half, which is fine. However, they're only playing 1 session, whereas I'm playing 2. I have to prep for 2 sessions. I have to remember things the character know. It makes it a lot more work for me, and I don't want to do that if possible. I think the workaround will just be for, you know, them to just be more brief in their interactions with NPCs. And part of the problem is because the NPCs have just been so rich in character that you do want to spend time talking to them because it's enjoyable. But if you do it enough times in a row, it kind of becomes monotonous and boring. So they just need to either break up their shopping sessions or they need to make them more brief, which is either one is possible. It's up to them. I think that they should break it up just so they can have those good long role-play encounters with interesting people. So we'll see what happens in the next couple sessions, but things that I've learned have been just, you know, keep staying in contact with your players, make sure you're getting constant feedback and implementing that feedback. And it's just an ever-growing cycle as the players both progress and learn and change, and I learn, grow, and change. You know, so does the type of game that we're playing. So it's always morphing into something new. So thanks for listening this long, if you're still listening, and we'll see you in the next session, session 25. Get out of here. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.